good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday at 4 p.m. ET, and that means it is crime time here on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 13 thrillers, the newest being Her Perfect Life, casually displayed behind me. I guess it's this way, which is now a nominee for the Agatha Award for Best Novel of the Year. So thank you so much for that. Today on Crime Time, we have the absolute joy and honor and delight of introducing to you and interviewing Stephanie Wrobel, whose brand new book, This Might Hurt, is out today, 22222, the best pub date of all time. Samantha Bailey says, our pal Samantha Bailey says, this book is a genius, ripped from the headlines masterpiece. And if that's not good enough, it has starred reviews from Booklist and Library Journal and Publishers Weekly. And I've got to tell you, people, that does not happen very often. Stephanie, congratulations and
Thanks.
welcome to Crime Time. How has your pub day been for This Might Hurt?
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun so far. It's a ton of interviews, which is great because, as you know, you sit in a room by yourself for months and months. So to actually be out among people, even if it's virtually, is something different and something fun.
And your first book, Darling Rose Gold, was such a sensation. We'll talk more about that. Such an international bestseller. And this one is getting equally marvelous reviews. Was that brought a little bit of apprehension to you, this second book?
Oh, absolutely. Like not only the writing of it, but certainly the publishing of it as well. Because, when you're a debut, you have nothing to compare any numbers or whatever to. Everything just seems thrilling. If one person says one positive thing, that seems thrilling. But now you have something to measure it against. So it's a little more anxiety inducing.
But now that the starred reviews are in, do you think of yourself a little bit differently? I mean, to have your second book be a smashing success, do you think, I'm a writer?
I tend to be the kind of writer that like the negative reviews will stick with me longer. And I've been very blessed and lucky to have these positive reviews that you mentioned. But yeah, I do, I feel like a real writer now that I've got published books and I can go in a bookstore and all of that. But there's still, always that voice in the back of your head that goes, what if it could have been better? So I'm not going to lie and say I have no self-doubts or anything like that. But
I've never talked to a successful writer who does not have self-doubts. I mean, I think that's what keeps people going. That's what keeps us going, is that we could be better. It could be better. What if somebody doesn't like it? But please take it from me. I hope you will take time today at least to bask in the joy that your new book, This Might Hurt, is going to be fabulous. And it is fabulous. It's one of the reasons we were so thrilled that you agreed to be on Crime Time today. If you are new to Crime Time, if you are new to A Mighty Blaze, you know that A Mighty Blaze started almost 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic by the fabulous powerhouse team of Jenna Plum and Caroline Levitt to keep us together, to keep us reading, to keep us writing, to keep us talking about books, and sort of generally staying together as a community. And when I look over here to see the comments, I see Anita and I see Sherry and I see Anissa and I see Gail and so many people here today. Many of us wouldn't even know each other without A Mighty Blaze and without Crime Time. And another reason why we're so pleased to welcome Stephanie Wrobel here today to Crime Time. Let me read you her bio very, very quickly, and then I promise I'll let her talk. Stephanie Wrobel grew up in Chicago. I did too. We should talk. But has been living in the UK for the last 4 years with her husband and her dog, Moose Barwinkle. And we should probably talk about that. She has an MFA from Emerson College right up the street from me, small world, and she has had short fiction published in Bellevue Literary Review. Before turning to fiction, she worked as a creative copywriter at various advertising agencies. Darling Rose Gold, and you know this book, an Edgar nominee, right, was her first novel and an international sensation. And we are giving away a copy of the new one, This Might Hurt, today on Crime Time. So, two fast things. leave a comment, leave a question, leave just general applause and congratulations for Stephanie, and you will be entered to win a copy of This Might Hurt. And in about 35 minutes, when the questions are over, we're going to have a super fabulous, I say that knocking on wood, new way of choosing the winner of This Might Hurt. So do stick around for that. It's live. What could go wrong? So welcome, Stephanie. I want to talk about fear and cults and family relationships and sisters and expectations and the need and desire to be loved and part of something. All of that is so wonderfully explored in this book. But tell us the basic story so we know what we're talking about.
Sure. So This Might Hurt is the story of three women, two of whom are sisters, Natalie and Kit Collins. And when the book starts, they haven't spoken in 6 months because Kit has been away at this self-improvement retreat called Wisewood on a private island off the coast of Maine. And so the book starts with Natalie getting this email from a Wisewood account that says, "Would you like to tell your sister what you've done, or should we?" So this sends Natalie into a panic because, of course, she's been keeping this secret. And so she heads to Wisewood to come clean to her sister before anyone else can, and hopes to bring her back home.
And there's just, it's such a chilling, haunting story because everyone has secrets. And I have to say that as we're reading the book, we don't know what the secret is, and we can only guess what that might be, which makes it even more chilling. So many of your starred reviews, Stephanie, and there have been so many of them, have called it ripped from the headlines. Talk a little bit about why they would say that.
Well, I think, you do hear, although it's not based on any one cult, you do hear a lot of these, cult stories where it seems like this functional society, and then all of a sudden everything comes tumbling down. The most recent famous example, I think, being Nexium, probably. And like I said, though it's not based on any one cult, I researched a lot of real cults in order to create my own. So I wanted to know, what personality traits do cult leaders possess in common, as well as members? What are some of the rules that they abide by? What are some of the techniques they use to keep members in line? And once I had all of that stuff, then I could go on from there and sort of flesh the characters out, make them my own, create my own belief system and all of that stuff.
Just create your own belief system,
yeah,
as we all do. Was the cult the core of it, and then you decided you made this cult and then decided who to put in it? Or in what order did the sisters and the three women, let's put it that way, the three women and the cult come? Did you have women first or cult first?
The cult first. So I knew that I wanted to get inside the head of a cult leader and a cult member. So those two came first, and really Natalie, the outsider, the sister, came last. And it's funny that you mentioned, a book about sisters, because I didn't really intend to write that. It was just sort of, I knew I needed a third person that was sort of the outside figure, and I wanted someone that felt more obligated than a friend, but less dedicated than a parent. So a sibling just felt like the right balance. And I have two younger sisters and no brothers. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to explore a relationship I've known all my life.
That is interesting. And I want to ask you about that in a minute, because I do have on my list to talk about sisters, because it's such a realistic relationship between the two of them that I wondered if you did have them. I have them too. But rewinding a little bit to cults. So you researched what a leader of a cult must have, the characteristics. What did you discover?
So on the positive side, they're very charismatic. They are excellent salespeople. On the flip side, they are typically narcissists. They're very manipulative. And I don't know if you would say this is a positive or negative, but they really, for the most part, do believe what they're selling. So they're not just trying to, convince people of a sham that they themselves don't believe in. They really think they are the answer, hence the narcissism, to, people's problems.
That is interesting, because that is so double-sided. And I wondered about that, whether a cult leader, as you did, comes up with a belief system out of need, out of hope, out of megalomaniacal vision of himself or herself in the world, whether they do believe it or whether it's to get something. It's to get something, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely obsessed with power and influence. So I think they can very much bend the rules and the principles to their purpose. But
Mm.
from what I read, most of them do start out, really believing that they can make a difference and that whatever sort of, system they're prescribing truly is going to improve the lives of people.
And but in the old sort of takes two to tango routine, the cult member has to fit in, their needs and wants and desires have to fit in with what the cult leader is offering.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about the member side of things is, when you first start out, you're not immediately pulled into all the craziness. A lot of what we see about cults in art or documentaries, whatever, shows the rituals, the uniforms, the crazy haircuts, like whatever it is. But nobody signs up for a cult. You join a religious organization, you join a social group, and it's low commitment at first. Like you dip your toe in, you meet some people that are very like minded, who are also searching for deeper meaning in their lives. And then it's just incrementally, bit by bit, you get pulled in more and more. So yeah, it's tricky in that way. And I think it's easy for us to say, well, this would never happen to me. Like you'd have to be so naive, so foolish. But when you really take a step back and look at how incremental it is, I think it makes more sense how people end up falling into cults.
I mean, when one of the main characters, when Natalie goes and steps one foot into this island, she, her initial thought is, well, this is beautiful. It doesn't seem so weird. And one of the things that I think is fascinating when you think about cults is how if you call it a cult, it's bad. But what all of us are sitting around with our phones on all the time, connected to the rest of the world, but that's okay. The idea that we have to be on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook or get to be, and our lives are ruled by that. And characters wonder in the book whether that way of life is cultish as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the people who have joined Wisewood, part of the whole rule system there is disconnecting from the outside world, not being so obsessed with technology and just constant connection that's sometimes feels very superficial. And I think, when I was designing this cult and this belief system, I really wanted it to be, in theory, things that the reader could nod their head at, like,
Mhm.
sure, who wouldn't want to be more fearless? Sure, who wouldn't want to think like worry less about what people think of them? Because again, I think that's probably what the real cult experience feels like. It's not starting out, I'm going to have you be drinking Kool-Aid or with cyanide in it. I mean, it's very much things that seem reasonable initially. That's why people join. And so that was important to me to put in the book, to just like make it feel more true to life.
And I love that. And I thought we're talking about This Might Hurt, with the most sinister title in the world. We're talking about This Might Hurt with Stephanie Wrobel, which is about halfway about cults. As I started entering the world of the cult, you really got me with that, because I thought, I need a mantra. Yes, I could be more fearless. Yes, I'm afraid of things when I shouldn't be afraid of them. This sounds fine to me. And then there's a moment in the book, and this doesn't give anything away, when someone walks by and someone says, what's that? And it's a mammoth box of thumbtacks.
Mm.
And the other person says, what's that for? And she says, you'll have to come find out. And I'm thinking, no, don't go. And that's one of the geniuses of this book, Stephanie, is that some of it is shown and some of it is just suggested,
Mm.
just as chillingly. What was that like to write? You make this belief system and then you have to make it real.
Yeah, I mean, you read all the time that leaving it up to the reader's imagination is often way more horrifying than anything you can, depict on the page. So I do use that a lot. I think the most gruesome thing is the very first page with that split performance. Yeah, you're already holding your hand up, but I think it's not indicative of the rest of the book in the sense that nothing else. I don't think like extremely cringeworthy happens to the extent where you can feel it happening to yourself and you just kind of want to look away. Because I do think the power of suggestion is, to your point, what is someone doing with a box full of thumbtacks? Now that I know a little bit about the principles of this place, like I can put two and two together about what those are going to be used for. And I
Exactly.
do,
Well,
yeah. I think I was just going to say, I think it's fun to kind of let the reader go, wait, what? And it is interesting that that's yours. I'm curious to see what different readers, like what their moment of like, wait, what? Like, like now you're starting to lose me. I think it will
Right.
differ.
Well, and you just did a wonderful job. And when you brought up the very beginning, I thought, oh, yikes. I was really glad that I was going to interview you, because I thought, I don't know if I can read this,
Mm.
but it's so short. And then you turn to page one, and it's just this wonderful, accessible, interesting, fabulous book that you absolutely can't put down. Again, you all stars from Library Journal and Publishers Weekly and Book List, which is a trifecta of wonderfulness. The thing is, though, going back to the thumbtacks, there are people who might say, yeah, whatever, bring it on.
Yeah.
And the idea of learning not to be afraid, again, this incremental thing where if you're taught not to be afraid, how much can you mind over matter fear? Was that something that was interesting to you?
Yeah, very much so. And I think it completely depends on the person. There's when we talk about different thresholds for pain and just also like how fearful a person is, like, I think you could argue about how much of that is genetic versus, taught or societal, whatever. But yeah, that was an endless source of fascination. Once I found out, and I can't remember where in the research process or when I exactly did, but once I found out that fear can actually make pain feel worse, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. That felt like getting onto something that was just, I mean, it makes sense inherently, but I guess I just never thought about it before. And so the idea that does go back to this idea of mind over matter and just thinking like, well, do I actually have it within me to, let's say I got stabbed in the leg or whatever, to hypothetically feel less pain than somebody else? And I think, that's a very alluring concept. Like I said earlier, who wouldn't want to feel less pain or less fear? And being promised that sort of thing, I think, is an enticing offer.
And again, you just have to try, you have to try it to see if it works. And there are people who would try it, and there were people who wouldn't, and people who would revel in having done that. You talked about fear as a thing that's also taught. And that is a big part of this book too. Not only the cult, but there's a father figure in this book who is one of the most terrifying fathers that I have ever encountered in all of anything that I've ever read.
Well, thank you.
And you
I'll
call
take
him,
that as a compliment.
well, I guess it is. He's called Sir, and when you have a father called Sir, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Sir and where he came from.
Yeah, with that character, and they remain unidentified for the first, third of the book, so I won't say who it is, but with that character, I knew who she was as an adult, and I wanted to figure out why she was that way, why she believed the things that she does. So I just started working my way backwards, into young adulthood, and then further and further and further. And what I arrived at was Sir. And it's interesting how much she wants to be nothing like him and change, and yet so many of the things that she believes as an adult come directly from things that he's taught her. So he continues to have this influence on her, even once she's sort of escaped his abusive ways.
And it's sort of a cult, he's created a cult in his family.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely rules with an iron fist. His wife and she and her sister's mother is completely ineffective, really. She's almost one of the kids, for lack of a better phrase. But yeah, he is a completely despicable character. But he serves his purpose, and he has a very, very long lasting effect. And you could argue the successes that she reaches are in part because of him. Certainly, all of the neuroses as well. But I think that's probably pretty true to life too. Your parents, you get the good and the bad. So,
well, it's interesting. You made me think of this, and I want you to know that my dad was one of the sweetest, most loving, most wonderful, gentle people that has ever existed on this entire planet. And we lived in Chicago when I was growing up. When I was about 3, we went to the shore of Lake Michigan. And I wonder if you've had this experience. And it was one of the days that there was the alewives were dead along the shore of Lake Michigan. These millions of dead fish wash up on the shore.
Mm.
And I was about 3, and my father and I were walking down the beach, and I started shrieking about all these dead fish. You can use this, Stephanie. Was shrieking about all these dead fish. And my father said, "We're going to walk through the dead fish." And I said, "No, I'm not walking through the fish."
Mm.
And he said, "Yes, you are. You have to. You have to. They're dead. They can't hurt you." And he made me do it, and I was traumatized by
Yeah.
it. And 50 years later, he asked me if I remembered the fish, and I said I did.
Wow.
Um, I left out the terror part because he didn't need to know that. And
Yeah.
he apologized to me. And
Hmm.
he said that that was the worst decision he'd ever made as a parent, that he was just trying to make me not be afraid.
Yeah.
And so I thought about, now my dad was the farthest from Sir, but I thought about how you've taken what parents do and made it into this grotesque, terrifying, traumatic thing. Was that scary to write?
Well, I haven't, I didn't have really experiences like that myself growing up. But I feel like,
Lucky you.
yeah, I know. Without getting too into, what parenting is now versus then, I do feel like maybe previous generations, maybe my parents' generations, more so this idea of throwing someone in the deep end, literally in this case, was, and you teach yourself and you learn that way, was more of an accepted thing. I think now people read that and they're horrified, understandably. But yeah, it was a lot. I think there was less coddling, certainly, and more just kind of questionable. I don't know. It's like parenting, but at what point is you're truly terrorizing kids? So, and to your point, it really stuck with you. Like, do you think that you like got anything out of that? Like, do you think it had any positive effect, or were you just like, this is a horrible memory? Like,
Well, I mean, my dad is great. He was great. I mean, in every single way. And we're dear friends from moment one. So the reason I think it's such an interesting moment is that he was purely and gorgeously trying to do something to help me.
yeah.
It was just at that moment the wrong thing. It was just at that moment the wrong thing to do. I just remember the dead fish. We don't need to talk about this. We could this might hurt is much scarier. This might hurt is much scarier than a million dead fish. And there's a good quote for you, right? The title, This Might Hurt, even is so chilling. Was it always called This Might Hurt? And thank you for listening to my fish story, you all. Was it always called This Might Hurt? And where did you come up with that?
When I write books, I need to have them like pretty set in stone before I can come up with the
Mm.
title. So I just had a placeholder. Wisewood was what I was calling it the first
Oh.
3 drafts, I think. And then, after a while, my editors were like, okay, it's time to come up with a real title. We came down to a few favorites, and This Might Hurt. And then the other one was The Fearless, which we also liked a lot. But both of my editors in the US and UK just really loved that visceral feeling of This Might Hurt. So I was really happy with either of those. So yeah, that's how we ended up there.
Well, This Might Hurt is brilliant. I will go on the side of brilliant because hurt is one thing, but might, which means like it might not hurt, and you have to try it to see. And that sinister aura just is throughout the book. Every page is this impending dread about what terrible thing might or might not happen, and what might work and what might not work. Again, the through line of the book, not only fear and not only cult and not only wanting to belong, but a cult is like a family, and you choose two sisters to lose their connection and try to get it back. Again, earlier you were talking about the reason for sisters. I saw Gail said you might want to read this with the light on. Oh yeah, it is haunting and creepy good scary, not close the book scary, just
Yeah.
creepy scary. It's keep reading scary. And you know what? I'm going to rewind a minute because Shannon Hansen and Sherry, everybody's asking about the plate on the cover and
Mhm.
whether it is significant. Tell us a little bit, as much as you want to.
Sure.
I'm always afraid of these things,
Yeah.
about the significance of the plate.
Yeah, it's definitely significant with some of the stuff that we've been talking about in terms of young children sort of being tasked with these impossible things. The platter plays into that. So this Sir character that we've been talking about, as well as this kind of anonymous child, The scene with the platter happens between them in, I believe, chapter 6, if you specifically want to know where. And then it plays less of a literal role as it goes on, but it does come back a couple times. So yes, the platter is very significant to the novel.
But the idea also, sort of metaphorically, if I may, is that something that's very beautiful is broken.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of resonance throughout the book. The idea how life is fragile, our minds are fragile, we're very vulnerable. I mean, talk a little bit about vulnerability, which is also such a part of this.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at every character who joins Wisewood, regardless of whether they're really invested, like a staff member, or just a guest who's there for 6 months, because not everybody there is somehow tricked or forced into staying. Most of the people that come do their 6 month stays and then they go on back to their, regular lives. But every person that comes in has some sort of pain that they're trying to get past. And so, yes, the broken plate is certainly a metaphor for what these people are going through. Everyone comes with the best of intentions, just wanting to be stronger, more fulfilled, happier, whatever, you want to choose. But as they learn, it's certainly not as easy as just follow these steps, 1, 2, 3, and then everything will be better.
And even with crazy glue, you're not going to put the plate back together the way it was when it began, which is just another wonderful way of looking at this. We're talking about This Might Hurt, Stephanie Wrobel's brand new book, which is out today, 22222, and we are giving away a copy of this pretty soon. Please leave a comment or a question or just general applause for Stephanie, and you'll be entered to win a copy of her book with our crazy new way of picking a winner that I cannot wait for you to see. So rewinding to the sisters, talk a little bit about the sister relationship and why that's so powerful and why you chose that for this book.
Sure. So, I mean, I think, like, as I said, from a more practical perspective, I only have sisters. I mean, sure, I could have imagined a brother sister relationship or whatever, but I do think, well, I can only speak to the relationship between sisters again, but from experience, especially when I was younger, the the speed at which a relationship can turn from best friends to mortal enemies is astonishingly quick, and there's not a ton of other relationships in life that I would say are similar to that. I can remember when my sisters and I were kids, we'd be getting along fine, and then all of a sudden, we weren't speaking, but then you forgive each other fat, you know what I mean? So it's just a very interesting relationship, and to get into the book specifically, Natalie feels definitely a certain obligation to watch over her sister, not only because their deceased mother has asked her explicitly to watch over her, but also just, Natalie's been put in a position where she's sort of had to parent Kit all of her life. And I didn't have to do any of that myself. I have two wonderful parents. But it's very real, and of my own experience, that as the oldest, I was expected, to be the most responsible one, to watch over them. And so all of that, came from real life.
Yeah, and let me just say one more time for all of you, we are giving away a copy of This Might Hurt, and the more questions and the more comments and the more adulation you put in every time you comment, you are entered to win. So the more the merrier here. I have sisters as well, and there's also a lot of competition among sisters that balances. There's the need to care for each other, and there's also the need to be the favorite. And you quantify that almost in the book.
Yeah, well, so there are two sets, without, again, getting into too much, there are two sets of sisters in the book, right? So their relationships are, of course, they have similarities, but also some big differences. And yeah, in that relationship that you're referring to, it's measurable parental love with the point system that Sir devises. Which is that for people who haven't read it, which is probably most people in here, that you have to reach a certain number of points earned through chores or whatever sort of sadistic activities in order to go to bed at night. Otherwise, he will keep you up basically all night. And he says this is all with the intention of making them stronger kids, making them hardworking and responsible and whatever. But of course, as you're reading through it, it very much does not feel that way.
You seem like such a nice person, Stephanie. Did you always want to write this kind of chilling psychological manipulative thriller. Where do those stories come from in your brain?
Yeah, I don't think I set out to write thrillers per se. To be honest, Darling Rose Gold just I think it took that form because, when you tell the story of a mother and daughter, one of whom's been abusing the other for years and years, like there's bound to be some darkness there. But really my interest lies in society's outliers. I
Mm.
like to tell and inhabit characters' minds who I think I'm never going to be able to reasonably pull off. So in the first one, that was Patty with having Munchausen by proxy. And this one, that's a cult leader and a cult member. I find the challenge of trying to inhabit the psyche, of trying to have empathy for people who sometimes society doesn't have much empathy for. I find that to be a really interesting and meaty challenge.
That's so interesting about the empathy. Where does that come from? How does that manifest itself?
I think that's like our greatest tool and the most important thing a writer can possess. I think, the worst villains in my mind, certainly if they're a point of view character, are the ones where you can tell the author has no empathy and is just kind of full of judgment for those characters because
Mm.
they come off as very one dimensional and sort of flat. I mean, in real life, the vast majority of people are not all good or all bad. We all do our best, or sometimes we don't do our best. But even for people who are more bad than good, they don't view themselves as the villain, certainly. And so yeah, any of my, more villainous type characters, I still try to see things from their point of view because I mean, I just think that's so much more interesting. It's harder than just, writing them off and saying, okay, now they're twirling their mustache or whatever.
No, and you did such a gorgeous job. I'm going to hold the book up again. This beautiful granny apple green, This Might Hurt, with the broken platter on the front, shards of broken china on the front, just out today. You did such a gorgeous job with that empathy because, again, just like the steps of going into a cult and just like the steps of accepting your parents or a relationship, it's step by step by step. And at some point, then you realize you're in a place that you never wanted to be or never even imagined you could be. When your readers finish the book, how do you want them to feel?
Oh gosh, I don't know. How do I want them to feel? I would say like the takeaway that I hope readers have is just maybe slightly modifying the typical understanding of cults. So viewing cult members with a bit more empathy and understanding and less like they're just some sort of freakish anomaly, like, well, I'm too smart for this sort of thing. Like that was my main once I had done the research and came to understand what these people are all about, that was really the aim of the book, was to kind of make it less like a circus or, whatever, and more real and human.
Because no, it's interesting. I was thinking about the setting and how gorgeous the setting is and how visual and cinematic the setting of this cult place is on the island in Maine with the hedge and the dining place and the schoolhouse and the guest places and the secret doors and all that. Was that a real place in Maine that you went, or was that straight out of Stephanie's imagination as well?
Yeah, no, that was straight out of my imagination. So the island itself is completely fictitious. I have it set in my mind somewhere real. So specifically, off of Rockland Harbor in Penobscot Bay, the biggest islands in that area are like Vinyl Haven. So it's mid-coastal Maine, basically. And those things are real because I wanted, when Natalie leaves to go to Wisewood, I wanted her to be leaving from a real harbor and things like that. But the island itself is just completely the thing that I liked about that being completely fictitious is I could make the island the exact size I wanted. I could make Wisewood's facilities like perfectly what I wanted. That's the luxury of the fiction writer.
And the cool part, again, back to the metaphors of it, is that you were talking about having empathy with people in a cult. And you have Natalie coming in, looking at the cult from the outside in, but then you also allow us to see from the inside out. So you take us into this place from both perspectives. And I think that's one of the things that's so beautifully done and so educational about it and emotionally rewarding about This Might Hurt. So congratulations on a truly haunting, thought-provoking novel. I want to get some questions from the audience. I know we have several of them. So this would be the time to get your last questions in and make sure that you enter for the drawing for This Might Hurt. Sherry wants to know, how do you name your characters?
Ooh, so it's nothing it's nothing too, I guess, structured. Rebecca is an homage to the book by Daphne du Maurier. And Natalie and Kit, I don't know, they were just I just kept thinking through names, until I landed on something that felt right. There's some characters, like in other books, let's say like Rose Gold, where I really spent a lot of time getting, specifically picking that. But for some reason with this book, I didn't feel like Natalie and Kit's specific names mattered so much. So I don't know why I made that. It was just kind of an instinctual thing, I guess.
I mean, it is interesting that sometimes as a writer, a name just doesn't work. And then for some reason, another one just does work.
Yeah.
Kit the smaller, Kit the second, Kit like Kitten the little one, certainly. But you can, these are the things that we figure out later. But it's always a wonderful question. Gail is saying, as I'm a local, what are some of the areas you found were beneficial from your Emerson MFA in your writing career?
Does this mean within areas within the Emerson MFA or physical places within Boston?
You're the boss. You answer whatever. How did you like Boston? How did you wind up in Boston? Didn't you love Emerson? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so Boston was amazing. Some of the areas that I loved working in were the Boston Public Library and the main branch on Boylston, specifically the second floor, the desks by the staircase. That is where I would go if I needed to really focus and sort of, get out of the house, whatever. And then in terms of just inspiring places around Boston, there's so many good bookstores. I mean, Trident Cafe, and Brookline. And then I love the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, like that beautiful atrium. So yeah, it just has like such a bookish feel to me too, the city of Boston.
Yes.
It feels like a lot of people say it's the most European feeling city, US city. And I agree with that, with all the cobblestones and things like that. If you go to areas like Beacon Hill, it feels like stepping back in time.
I live in Boston, as you know, you all, and if I walk on the Common or in the Public Garden, I think about all the people who walked there before on that very same land that I am, and how connected we are with all those people. So yeah, I love Boston as well. Any more questions? Who else has a question? I know someone was asking, where do you like to write? Thank you.
Oh, so now, yeah, for the most part, I write at home now. A lot of times, it depends what I'm doing. If I'm drafting and revising, a lot of times at my desk in my office. But if I'm in a more brainstorming phase, I like to get more comfy. So I'll do like the couch or a comfy chair or something like that. I don't know why, but for some reason it feels less like work, and it's probably just like one of those weird like writer, I don't paranoias or whatever. But yeah, those two areas seem to be where most of
whatever works, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and you were in London for a while.
Yes. So on and off, I've been in London for 6 years. I moved there once, for my husband to go to business school, and then moved to Boston for me to go to graduate school. And then we moved back again. So I've just been crossing the Atlantic like every couple of years since, 2014, basically.
And speaking of how you pick your names, though, your dog's name, we need to hear about that.
Moose Barkwinkle. So we just thought everyone in our house gets their own last name. I kept my name when my husband and I got married. And yeah, to be honest, like we had some inside joke with the name Moose. He's a cockapoo, so he's only 30 pounds. He is not the size of a moose by any stretch, but he does have a larger than life personality. He's such a ham. So it ended up being quite an appropriate name for him.
I love that. That is great. That's marvelous. So I thank you all. We are going to try this fabulous new way of choosing a winner for the book, This Might Hurt, by Stephanie Wrobel. Again, sorry for the phone ringing. You know that the phone always rings during crime time. This is just a rite of passage. So thank you for putting up with that. Let's spin the wheel now and see who is going to win a copy of This Might Hurt. And it is Sherry Steuben. I love that. Is that not fabulous? That is the funniest thing I've ever seen. Should we keep the Wheel of Fun? Shall we keep the Wheel of Fun as our winner? I think we love that. Congratulations, Sherry. And you have been a wonderful veteran of Crime Time. So I can't think of a better person to win. And we will do this from now on. You win a copy of This Might Hurt by Stephanie Wrobel. Stephanie, congratulations on the launch day today. Do you have many more interviews to do before the day is done?
No, this is my last one. So ending on a super fun note. I have never seen one of those wheels before. So yeah, I'm honored to have been the trial, the guinea pig.
That's great. You're the first to be part of the Wheel of Fun. So we will never forget that. You all are the first to be part of the Wheel of Fun. So we love that. Now, let me tell you two quick things. One is, do not forget that next week on Crime Time, Tuesday, 4 p.m. ET, we will be talking to Erica Forensic, whose brand new book, which is an Indie Next Pick, Girl in Ice, is a chilling, thriller. And I want you to realize that it says, not girl on ice, girl in ice. And that should be an indication of what this book is about. So join us next Tuesday at 4 p.m. for Girl in Ice by Erica Forensic. And I hope you will join us then. And now we will say goodbye to the fantastic novelist, Stephanie Wrobel, whose new book, This Might Hurt, is just out to much acclaim. And Stephanie, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Hank. This was really fun.
Happy lunch day, and we will see you all the next time. Till then, stay safe and keep reading, and we'll see you next Tuesday.